Now then, this is a tale of fixing things again, and earlier this week we were making we were making one electric lawnmower out of two. One has got a broken blade, the other one had the grass collector missing and the cable had been chopped off. So as you can appreciate, we swapped blades over and reground them and messed about. But as with all these things, the single bolt that was holding the blade on proved to be somewhat difficult. So we got the air impact out, and 30 seconds later the bolt came undone. Even though previous to that we'd been using breaker bars and all sorts of things, just would not shift and we were going to break or bend something, but this did the job. So that reminded me that in the back of the shed I got an even bigger one, and it'd been sat in a tub of diesel for about 3 months because it was seized up. And this is a 1/2 inch, and there was a 3/8 drive there as well. So I thought I'd take the 3/8 drive apart, which I did, and then put it back together, and it still doesn't work at the moment. Now the problem with this one, which is the same with this one, is the trigger is seized. So I found out a few things about the trigger taking this one apart, and I'm not sure whether there's a bit missing or whilst I was taking it apart I lost something. So I'm just going to point out what I found out, and then we're going to take this one apart and we're going to do it bit by bit and see what happens. This one, when you put air into it, the pneumatic motor doesn't go round, but air comes straight out the exhaust because the trigger is pressed in. Now, because the motor's not going round, I don't think that's probably a big deal. It's probably just a bit of muck. So we'll just see. First of all, we'll just look down here on the bench and look at the conundrum that I've got. And they're both Aircat units. So the air comes up here. This spring is in a passageway, and there's a drilling on the end, and that bit there sticks in the drilling. Now this is the trigger, and it's just plain. There's no relieving or anything like that. So it fits in the drilling, and obviously it comes across here like that and pushes that down, and as it pushes that down it lets the air in, and also because of this spring it pushes this lot back out. Well, I think there's something missing there. Now if we had maybe a ball bearing, then this pushes the ball bearing, which pushes that down. Yeah, and then as the spring pushes the ball bearing, this pops back up, out. There is a little flat on the end there. So anyway, I may have lost that bit, or maybe somebody might have taken this apart before and lost that bit. I suspect it's me losing it. If I can't make any sense, I'll have to drain the bucket of diesel out, because I put this one, just the body, with that missing and that missing, back into the tub of diesel to try and free off the trigger mechanism, which goes there like that. Just like that. So the spring goes in here like this. So obviously the spring pushes up and it's supposed to pop this back out. And there's a pin there that stops this flying out because there's a little return there. Anyway, we're going to have the rest of it apart. So we'll start taking the other one apart and see if we can make any sense out of it. There we go. Give them a tap to start with. So we'll just draw that lot off. So I've removed those bolts. There we go. Okay. So that's the impact, and just down in here there's a washer that I can't get to at the moment. There's a bit of diesel in there, so I'm going to pour that out. So we've got that side out, then we can get to the motor side. So here's the impact, and those two pins there, one there and one there, just hold these weights in, and that is a spline drive there off the motor. And this washer, it's got a shoulder there, and that goes that way round, so that piece goes against the bearing, and the bearing is in there. And so that's the motor shaft there and the bearing. And so the shoulder on the washer is designed to push on the inner part of the bearing, not the outer part, so it moves with everything. So let's have the other side apart. So this is the back, and I've undone the 4 screws. And here's the forward and reverse. There we go. Just wiggle that, and there we go. And there's a pin here. That pin there stops the outside rotating. So you can take this off, and if you've got it upside down, that pin can very easily fall out and get lost. Right, let's just see if I can get this motor apart. I'll do that off camera. I think I have to turn it upside down and tap it and do all sorts of things, which is difficult to film and time consuming. But let's try it anyway. Turn it upside down. So you see how there you could lose that pin. Oh, that's easy enough. There's the motor with the vanes. And the vanes seem loose enough. So there we go. Put that to one side. And then I'm just going to clean this up, and then we'll have this lot apart, because that's where that spring lives. So we'll take that lot out and see if anything apart from the spring and that valve, that plastic valve, see if anything else falls out. So this is an interesting little spanner that I picked up a while ago, in the sort of same vein as the King Dick. There's a screw there that I suspect stops it from coming all the way out, and this body slides in there. So again, an interesting different approach to this sort of heavy duty spanner. Anyway, I'm going to use this to take the rest of this impact apart. Now, will we be able to get this undone? Oh. Right, something with a bit beefier. So I've got that loose, that comes out, and there's a gauze there. And then the spring should come out. Right, let's just tap this on there. See what else comes out. The valve body should be in there. I'm just going to have to investigate because it looks like there's a lot of muck in there. I did get that out, but one thing I found was it should be that way round. Interesting. So how this works, I have not got a clue, but it was definitely that way round. So I'm assuming there's a drilling up inside the body here that allows that piece to go up there, and then the cross shaft this shaft here, I'm not sure. It obviously goes like that. That feels like it's tapered. There's a slight, yeah. If you can see that, it pushes upwards. So maybe that's where, that's how that works. Now we've got to get the trigger mechanism out, and underneath this plastic cover, down in there, there's the minutest of roll pins, which are a pain in the neck to get out. You want a very, very fine pin punch or something like that. I actually used a hardened nail, but very small one, and a pair of pliers. Just ground the point of the nail off, held it with a pair of pliers so that therefore it won't bend, and I got this pin out. But it's not easy. But I think we may have sorted the conundrum out with having this that way up. Right, let's crack on. I'm just going to crack on with that because we know the bits that come out of here. Interestingly enough, this pin here is just pushed into this trigger assembly. Yeah, there's no clip or anything, it's just pushed in hard, and the pin keeps it in place. So pin out first. So these can be, that last one that I did, the small one, the 3/8, was really tricky. Oh, that's easy. It was, I was just wiggling, and eventually the plastic bit came off the shaft, and the shaft was still stuck there. And then I had to put a pair of mole grips in there and grab hold of the shaft and then lever either end to get it to move. I didn't know whether I was going to be successful or not. So this is a bit tight, but nowhere near as tight as the other one was. There we go. That was easy. And it's a bit rusty, so I'll have to clean that up and clean all this lot up. Now then, is there anything else in that hole? I don't think so, but I'm just going to give it a good investigate off camera. So this is not going to be a restoration, it's a matter of getting it to work properly. So the first thing to do is to, I've cleaned this out and blown it out, is to put the motor back in. So here's the motor, and I did take the various vanes out and clean any detritus off them. Okay. Then we remember that that hole goes at the top. I think actually I need a little drop of oil. To hold these in. That'll be better. And then a drop of oil round there. And in the bearing, and then that just goes in there, and there should be the pin somewhere. There it is, and the pin that holds it in place goes in there. So that's that. Okay, so the next thing to do is to put the rear case on. Again, I've given this a clean up, put a bit of oil on it, and that's the forward and reverse, and it says it's got 3 speeds. So we'll just put it in neutral, and that will wiggle into there. There we go. Right, we've got long bolts and short bolts. And I think the short bolts are the front. So I'm just going to clean these bolts up with the wire wheel because they're quite rusty. Just put a bit of oil on these. And tighten them up. So that's those tight, and this moves. Okay, so the next thing, a bit of oil on that bearing. Okay. That's the impact case. And that's a bush at the front there, so we can grease that, we can oil that, and then put some oil on here, and I believe you put oil in this case here, so we'll just put that together. There we go. And then the pin, not the pin, the washer with the shoulder there goes down, and then this goes there, so that those splines locate with the motor splines. So let's just see if I can do that. There we go. Wow, did you see that? And then the 4 short bolts, which again I'll just wire brush those off and put them in place. Right, so those bolts tightened down. That moves, which is great. Now the next thing to do is to put the valve in and put it in the right way around this time. Now these are a bit tricky, so you just have to drop them in and then wiggle them about with a screwdriver, just so it seats all the way down there. So I'll just do that. Yeah, so you just wiggle it about in there and suddenly it'll drop, which is fine. Right, but you know, you've got to be aware of that, otherwise the spring sits up like there. Yeah, and if it does that, you know that valve's not seated properly. I have oiled this, but I'll do a bit more. There we go. Now this has got a gauze and I've cleaned that, and it doesn't go straight like that, it's at a slight angle. You've got to be careful because you're trying to compress the spring and get this to seat in there properly, so cross threading wouldn't be that difficult. So you know, you can mistake compressing the spring for it being cross threaded. So instead of being square, it's got to be tilted slightly. In fact, you know, sort of in line with the back of the handle, which is at an angle. So we'll just tighten that down. And then the last thing to do, apart from putting the air connection on, is to put the trigger in. Right, that's that done. Now the trigger. So I've oiled up the, I've cleaned it up with a bit of wet and dry. That is the notch which goes at the bottom. Still feels a bit tight. There we go. That's right. And here's the pin. The little roll pin. Let's just let me roll it over the other way. There is the hole. That needs to be depressed a bit. Like that. And tapped in. There we have one air impact rebuilt. I'm going to wipe off all the oil and then we'll give it a road test. Now then, it's a couple of days later and the wind settled down. So we're going to test this. Now this is quite a heavy duty thing. There's a lot of mass or a lot of weight here, and those hammer blocks seem to be quite large, so I expect it's going to make a right lot of row. So the first thing to do is put some oil down the air inlet. I always do that whenever I use these air tools, just because the air line here hasn't got an oil supply. So we'll just do that. There we go. Right, give it a spin. And reverse. Okay. So, these haven't been off for ages, so let's just see how we get on. That's alright then. I don't want it that tight. That'll do. So there you go. Another bit of equipment fixed. You don't use it very often, but when you do, it's mighty handy. I'll catch up with you soon.